It is important, therefore, for all of us here to take care of our souls, because self-care really is the first step to a paradigm of peace, healing, and restoration. If we want to bring peace into the world, we cannot turn our faces from the plight of poverty, abuse, mental health challenges, homelessness, crime, and violence in our own backyards, nor can we continue slapping band-aids onto these long-standing problems. We need to understand the entire social, economic ecosystem of society and implement social innovation that covers a continuum of support for needs from roots to restoration. And that is what is going to break vicious cycles, and that's what I saw in the front lines. Prevention is a much more effective strategy to bring stability to a nation than waiting until unresolved problems create crisis. In the context that if we want to bring dialogue and make an impact for world peace, we have to be able to stabilize our own countries first. And work in tandem, but we need to have a pulse on how to bring stability at home. Ultimately, stability comes to a nation when authentic leaders genuinely listen, care, and serve the people. We live in a time when political polarization and economic collapse are shaking nations and causing drastic upsets in systems. I won't list the countries, but I think you know what I'm talking about. My recent studies on national security illustrate that when people are repeatedly disillusioned by corruption, broken promises, self-serving leadership, and feel trapped with imminent threat looming over their financial stability and safety, they will eventually react. But there is peace when a nation's leaders serve the people with responsibility, integrity, and make efforts to fix problems rather than just giving platitudes. So in order to effectively explore pathways to peace, we need to examine peace in a paradigm that identifies the components of peace as a continuum. It's not a static state, it's a continuum that has its own life. We need to accept the fact that conflict is a part of life in an imperfect world with imperfect people. And it becomes a greater problem when there is negligence, undue postponement, disinterest in resolution, or a lack of transparency and commitment to work through the conflict. And rather than viewing peace as an absence of conflict and setting unrealistic expectations, we need to focus on the capacity to resolve conflict and soberly determine if two entities are really ready to undergo a peacemaking process, and then find common ground to set goals and build a peacemaking strategy. Ultimately, the capacity for conflict resolution occurs when both entities realize that there is greater benefit to resolution than continuing in conflict. We do not resolve conflict by merely dealing with the symptoms. We resolve conflict as we work towards building mutual trust that creates a passage to the root of the problem. You need trust to get to the root of the problem together. Peace is ever moving and ever evolving because at some point, even after conflict is resolved, another will eventually pop up. Peace should therefore be viewed as an organic continuum that requires ongoing trust building and conflict resolution as you would in any personal relationship. So my premise really is that politics and what happens in the world is a macrocosm of the microcosm of the home of the individual. Trust is a delicate matter, and if there's any time that political agendas and selfish ambitions need to be set aside, it is in the peacemaking process. Otherwise, there's a risk of widening the chasm. And benchmarks and accountability mechanisms can help gauge the effectiveness of a process and compel both entities to stand by their commitment. Peace is not a sentimental dream. It's actually an objective process that requires disciplined emotions and moral courage. There's a lot of tough decisions that have to be made and thought through when you're talking about peace. True peace versus false peace. You can fool the people with platitudes and tokenism, but you can't cheat peace. It has a mind and life of its own. Peace will not flow unless there are genuine and mutual efforts for resolution and reconciliation. So there's only true peace, or an illusion of peace. Appeasement is not a pathway to peace. Fear-driven compromises aren't part of a peace process. Appeasement often hampers a true resolution process from taking place because it reinforces aggressive behavior. And as long as aggression produces beneficial outcomes for the aggressor, there is no urgency for aggression to stop. Oppression versus freedom. Fear installed by oppression is a powerful motivator, but it is unstable. Rather instills resistance over time, and at some point the people choose to die fighting rather than rot in captivity, so they revolt. Then the oppressor uses greater force to shut down resistance, so there's no peace under oppression. And where there is no peace, prosperity is hampered. And there's a theft of destiny where oppression takes place for both the oppressed and the oppressor. Freedom in a democratic society allows diversity to exist, and the capacity to make decisions for one's own life is vital to the human condition and allows an individual to soar into the realm of self-actualization. Freedom is significant for peace to flow, and where peace flows, the ground is fertile for prosperity. So when politicians lead with care and empower the people rather than oppress them, the people's positive well-being, gratitude, and patriotism cause them to bear greater outcomes for their country. I just am so encouraged by the messages that I heard today throughout this week and the individual conversations I've had with you, and many of us here are trailblazers. We are the first in our countries, or the second or third. We are really in the grassroots beginning of having a voice as overseas Korean diaspora in our countries. So we're very fresh, and in this place of trailblazing, we can actually start changing the paradigms around us by doing things differently than what the status quo is. We have all been on the receiving end at some point in our political journey of slander, betrayal, and vitriol. And the biggest lie humanity has ever believed is that the end justifies the means and that politics is a blood sport. Politics is toxic because people have accepted that politics is dirty. Politics should hold the golden standard, as politicians are the leaders in whose hands flow life, prosperity, justice, and freedom. Yet why do we make exceptions for them and expect them to be different? During a meeting about domestic violence, when I was doing my term on the Status of Women's Committee, I asked a woman who was one of the witnesses, how do you end domestic violence? And her answer was, you first begin by not abusing each other in the House of Commons during question period. That was a very, very profound statement. And so we cannot expect peace to come when we ourselves are contributing to a culture of abuse. We must counter this toxic culture with a spirit of honor. Our focus must always be on serving the people and doing it the right way. Anything less is unacceptable. We need to raise the bar. The world is hungry for leaders who love people, serve dutifully, and walk with integrity. As you enjoy your visit to Korea, I hope you will reconnect with your Korean roots and go back with more tools to bless the people you serve to shine their best. And I hope we will meet again after this forum as agents of peace, healing, and restoration at the world's decision-making tables. May God bless you. May God bless Korea by bringing peace. May He bless your people, the people that we serve. Thank you.